Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Chee-Tash. My name is Chris, and today we're continuing along our journey through the book The Clean Coder by Uncle Bob, Robert C. Martin. Today we're going over chapter 2, all about saying no. If you guys remember last time, chapter 1, we talked about professionalism and what it means to be a professional software engineer or software developer. We talked about taking responsibility. We talked about the Hippocratic oath that software devs should take, where you say to yourself that you first do no harm, and you do no harm to function, and you do no harm to the structure of your application. As well, we talked about, how you should always be continuously learning, always adapting, collaborating, mentoring people, because the best way to learn is to teach. And today we're talking about saying no. We're going to talk about a little bit about adversarial relationships and confrontation, just fun stuff that everybody likes to do. Just kidding. I don't know a lot of people who like to do that, but it is a very necessary thing, and it comes with the territory of being a professional or saying that you're a professional. So we're going to get things kicked off with the first slide here. And Uncle Bob starts off by telling us a little story of him at a company. This was a company where he was building a accounting system for the Teamsters Union. And the bosses at the company were just super adamant on getting this particular system up and running by a certain date. And they cracked skulls and they broke their backs and they worked 80-hour weeks, and they got it done. They finally could get it out and say that it was done by a certain day, but what they didn't foresee was the fact that there were issues when they went live. One of the things was that they were not foreseeing the amount of traffic that would be hitting the system, the accounting system. So needless to say, there was a lot of issues when they went live. So they reverted everything back and they tried again. When they reverted everything back, this time they had an even tighter deadline. They had to get it in by Friday, which I think was like the week that they reverted it back. But what they really needed was 4 weeks. That's what they really needed. So they finally got everything stable. And then they quit. And he actually kind of told this story back in like the intro or like the prologue to the book a little bit. Kind of alluded to this story. And they did get it done. They did get it done by Friday because their team leader said, okay, we'll try to get it done. And they ended up getting it done, but they quit because they didn't get a pay raise. I don't really think they got the pay raise that they wanted from it. And they spent so much time on it that it was frustrating for them. And he asks in this, who's really to blame? Is it, are the bosses to blame, or are we to blame because we should have said no to these crazy deadlines? And at the end here, he basically says professionals are expected to say no. Professionals are expected to have the guts to say no to something. That's what it means to be a professional. And this reminds me of other books that I've read where I'm trying to think of a book that I read that said this, where if you say yes to everything, maybe it's the one thing, because if you say yes to many things, then it spreads your energy too thin. But if you say no to all the stuff, then really the stuff that you're left with is all that matters. I think we did talk about that in the one thing, and you guys can check out, there's a playlist of me going through that book. It was a really good book. So you have to be able to say no. And really like any profession, but especially in a professional profession. Hard decisions are best made through the confrontation of adversarial roles. It's not your job to say yes to everything or I will try. Your job is to defend your objectives as aggressively as you can, says Uncle Bob. And the thing is, the other people who are trying to tell you something opposite of what your objective is, they're trying to aggressively defend that objective as well, even if it goes against yours. They're trying to get you to say yes, and you really want them to say no. So it's the job of a professional. If you guys are both professionals, both parties need to come to the best possible outcome. And if both parties are failing to search for the best possible outcome, well, that's not good for the relationship, for the company, for everybody. When you say yes to something or I will try, it's basically like you're just accepting the other side's objective and your own objectives don't matter. So what does that say about you as a professional? And he says, these aren't pleasant conversations. Conversations like these are adversarial to start, but they're to be expected when people pursue their goals and are not in perfect alignment. And that's where, as professionals, we need to come together and seek basically the best possible outcome. Somebody wants it done in a week. You say 4. Okay, maybe we can get one thing done in a week and then get the rest done in 4 weeks. This so sort of negotiation, implicit negotiation takes place. But what about why things can't get done? So you tell somebody comes up to you and says, hey, I need that feature done in a week. And you tell them it's going to take 4. Well, shouldn't you explain why it's going to take longer? And Uncle Bob has a section in the book where he talks about this. And he says, well, not really. Why is less important than the fact? Why is just the detail? And you don't want to give too much detail to somebody who's higher up, who maybe doesn't have as many of the technical skills as you do as a developer. We're talking about specifically software engineer developer here. So he says, be careful about giving too much detail because that could lead to micromanagement by a boss who maybe isn't as technically sound as you. You're going to give them details and they might not really understand that, we're trying to convert everything to an interface to make it more reusable, and we're trying to update some of our classes. They're not really going to understand. Maybe some of them will. But it's really just best to give them the fact. And save the why. Just save it. Don't really go into too much detail with the why, unless maybe they really understand what you're talking about. But still, even then, be careful that the relationship doesn't become too micromanagey. What about when things are high stakes? What about when it's like a mission critical thing for your company? It's do or die. Your company succeeds or fails. Well, Uncle Bob says now that is the most important time to say no. When the decisions are key, you need to give the best information you can. And it doesn't mean the best information is not just saying yes to something ridiculous. It's saying no when that is the best information that a company needs to hear, that something is not going to get done. It's just not going to get done in the fashion that you want it to. So we need to adjust our forecasts and come to some sort of common ground here. So when it's high stakes, that's the best time to say no. And I guess, I'll throw this out there. You don't want to just say no to say no. Like, then if you say no to everything, then people look at you like, all right, we just can't work with this guy. it's saying no when it actually matters to say no. When you actually need to say no, not saying no every single time. Just like you don't want to say yes every single time. So this is something I got caught up in, being a team player. And I feel like this is like a buzzword that companies use, that somebody could use against you, a company, coworker, etc. Hey, don't you want to be a team player? So being a team player, what does that really mean? You know, Uncle Bob has a little definition here in the book. You know, being a team player means you're playing your position as well as you possibly can, helping out your teammates, communicating frequently, keeping an eye out for people, etc. That's being a team player. But what does a team player not mean? It is not someone who says yes all the time. And I've gotten caught up in this before at a previous company. I wasn't even a software developer, but I was at a distribution company where I said yes to so many different requests by my managers. And I found out that like they're coming to me with the requests because I think other people are saying no to them. And they know that, oh, Chris is a team player, he'll do it. Even when some of the requests don't make sense for me to do. And there were times where I should have said no. So countless examples of that. But being a team player is not somebody who says yes all the time. And that was kind of hard for me to read. And that kind of lit a light bulb turned down in my head. Next bullet point there, being for yourself by solely sticking to your objectives and not coming to a settlement with another person. Telling yourself it will still get done. So that's being a team player. Being a team player is sticking to your objectives and coming to some sort of common. So I don't know why I wrote that there. Telling yourself it will still get done. Yeah. So being a team player means sticking to your objectives and sticking to your objectives as the software development team. And expecting that another person is going to have different objectives, and then you guys need to find a way to work within those objectives and not just collapse your objective as a software developer. So that's what being a team player is, not saying yes to everything. Trying. Oh boy, Uncle Bob blew my mind with this one. Worst thing to say sometimes is, hey, we're going to try to get that done. We're going to try to get that done. But what he says, trying, there's that famous saying by Yoda, what does he say? Do, don't try. Something like that. Actually, wait, it's the beginning of the book. It's the opening quote here of the book. Do or do not, there is no trying. That's what Yoda says. And Uncle Bob says something similar. It's the worst thing to say sometimes. It's the worst thing to say because there's a lot of definitions of try, but the definition that he looks at is of one that says to give extra effort. To give extra effort. But if there's extra effort to be applied, then what were you holding back before? It communicates that you have extra energy, mental energy, capacity to throw at something. And that assumes that you didn't have that before. So he says to try means an admission that all it would take is extra effort. All that this project would take to get it done in a week is just extra effort. And then if that does not work, then you failed as a developer. You failed because you're communicating that, oh, this is just going to take extra blood, sweat, and tears, manpower, etc. But do you actually have that energy? Do you have the reserves? Do you have a new plan? That's really what you should use the word try for. Like, okay, we're going to try to do a new plan. Okay, we're going to try a new behavior out with with trying to get the project done. But if you don't have anything new to throw at it, then you're just lying when you say you're trying. You're just trying to, see, I'm using it there. All you're really saying when you say, oh, we're going to try to get it done, is you're saving face, you're delaying the inevitable, you're avoiding confrontation because you don't want to say no, and you're setting yourself up for failure. So he says it's better yes or no, but don't say try. Passive aggression, letting somebody fall into the debacle. So he tells a story in the book of somebody, a scenario that could play out if somebody, lets somebody run into the problem on their own, let somebody fall into the debacle and then say, hey, I told you this was going to happen, versus doing everything you can to avoid the debacle in the first place. So this happens with a meeting between two people, one person standing with the developer standing with their objectives. Hey, we can't get that done. The manager saying, no, you will get that done. And, the developer could just go about their way. They're not going to get it done in a week. And then come back after a week and the boss, flips out and gets angry. I thought we had an agreement. She says, no, we didn't. That could maybe potentially be passive aggressive. And the definition that I got from the personalized intelligence system, it's kind of like ChatGPT. It's really cool. It said that there's indirect expressions. Passive aggression is indirect expressions of negative emotions rather than direct and honest communication. So being direct, I think, is like the main theme of this chapter. So instead of being direct with your emotions, instead of being direct and saying no, you're very passive, trying to avoid the confrontation of a direct approach. You're trying to avoid the confrontation of what would happen if you say no. So that's passive aggression. The cost of saying yes. We want to say yes, right? And this is what Uncle Bob means in this chapter. It's about not avoiding confrontation, being direct, because we want to say yes. But the right yes takes an unafraid no, he says. In order to get to yes, you need to get to the no first. This is something that I've heard salespeople talk about. There's a great book, Never Split the Difference, by Chris Voss, one of my favorite books. And I think even in that book too, he might even explain in that book where you want the no's. Actually, no is like more valuable, he says, than a yes. Because oftentimes a yes is just to like get you off their back. Like, yes, I'll do it. Just get out of here. But no's really can lead you in a path to where somebody might say yes. And that's what you got to do as a professional software developer. Say the no's, because then when you need to say yes, you know exactly what you're saying yes to, and you know that you can do it. Code impossible, cowboy coding. In unprofessionalism, everybody loses. Employees, coworkers, the employer, your family, you. Because, if all of a sudden you're saying yes and you're saying, oh, we're going to try, and then you work overtime to try to get something done, and then you skip out on steps, so the app is losing out. You're working extra long, so your family's losing out. Maybe all of a sudden you get passive aggressive with your coworkers because you're working so much, and maybe some of the others aren't. So then the employer loses because you rush this app to go live without really checking a lot of stuff. Everybody loses. You, for your career, your professionalism, and you can't try to be a hero all the time. Trying to be a hero is trying to get everything done within the time frame that your boss set. But being a professional is saying, hey, that deadline's not going to work. We need more time, etc. Trying to be a hero leads to failure. Trying to be a hero is the opposite of being a professional, and it can lead to a coding mess. So all of a sudden, you're skipping out on writing tests, you're not testing it properly, and there's issues when you go live. So Uncle Bob says, saying you have to say yes to dropping your professional disciplines, saying yes to dropping your professional disciplines is not the path to a cohesive relationship with your employer, and it's not the path to a good work atmosphere or to a successfully deployed app. Professionalism is not impossible. It just, like he said earlier, it just takes guts sometimes to say no. And this isn't even anything new, and especially specific to software development. This can be in any career path or in life when you're out there in school, personal relationships, etc. And that's going to do it. Thank you guys so much for listening. We're going to be back next time with chapter 3, which is about saying yes. So I wanted to let you guys know the Chee-Tash podcast is finally on YouTube. So it was always on YouTube, but it was on a different channel. I didn't really push that channel. I was trying to, whenever I would post about a podcast episode, I would always try to direct people to the RSS website, plus it's on Apple, Spotify, etc. But RSS now has the ability to just upload the episodes that I upload to rss.com and ping it out to YouTube. So it makes uploading for me a lot easier, and I can just have a podcast playlist on the main YouTube channel. So the other channel is kind of going to be defunct now, and you can catch all the podcast episodes and the interviews that I've done on just this main channel that you're listening to right now. There's a podcast tab at the main channel, so you can get all of those interviews there. I thought that was really cool, and that helps me out too with uploading because it takes a while sometimes. But thank you guys very much for listening. We'll be back next time. My name is Chris. This has been Chee-Tash. Take care, everybody.